Doing a hand history review today for Patrick, who's a NL25 grinder on Merge. He sent me about 500 hands, which isn't a massive sample, but there was a few spots there that I thought I could comment on, so I'm going to jump straight into it. This first hand has got Ace King in the small blind, and this guy opens for just over 2 bigs in the cutoff, and Villain 3 bets on the buttons at 220, and his 3 bet stat is very high, it's 7.8. So, you know, he could be getting out of line there a lot in positions, so I think that the correct move is to 4 bet here. And I like the bet size a lot actually. I'd probably bet $6 just out of laziness and the fact I play so many tables. But I like 570 a lot because I mean it makes a big enough statement that your hand's good, and will force a lot of folds, I think, when obviously he doesn't have pocket aces, and every time you fold to a 5 bet you kind of save yourself 30 cents there, so I like the bet sizing. Original razor folds, and Villain jams for 101 big blinds. And I think that basically Ace King gets overplayed a lot in 100 big blind or more pots pre-flop, and I think that when you 4 bet out of the blue and from the small blind, you're not going to really be doing that with air a lot of the time, so I honestly think that when someone 5 bet shoves you, you need to let your Ace King go pre-flop. I mean, if you have history with a guy and you know that he gets out of line a lot and shoves quite light, then obviously you're probably going to want to snap him with Ace King, but I think 334 hands isn't a huge amount of hands to have on a guy, and I just think that you're not beating much. I mean, he would have to really have Ace Queen suited or Ace Jack suited for this to be, or for you to have any decent equity in the hand. So I think, I mean, you've just got to let it go pre-flop. I mean, the board rolls out in Patrick's favour, but he had what, 12% equity in the hand pre-flop, and I just don't think that Ace King plays very well all in with 100 big blinds in cash game. Obviously in tournaments you're going to probably just call off, but in a cash game I just think that when someone shoves over a 4 bet, they're not going to do that with a hand that Ace King really plays all that well against. I mean, at best it would probably be a race against queens. So that's the first hand. I would say that just don't be afraid to fold a 4 bet to a shove when you've got Ace King, but obviously consider what the player's like before you do fold or call, because obviously some people are just crazy and they'll pay you off with really bad hands shoving light. But I just don't feel that when you 4 bet, especially from the small blind like this, that people are going to shove at you with a hand that they don't want you to call. So I would say that's a fold. I mean, it's a shame that he's lost $5 there, but yeah, that's the first one. Okay, the second hand that I commented on, he had Ace Jack. It's this one. Okay, so we're in the small blind. We've got Ace Jack off. It's a reasonable hand. And these two extremely fishy looking players that rarely raise pre-flop, they're very passive, they're calling a lot of hands pre, limping a lot of hands pre, and Patrick comes in for a kind of standard sized raise from the small blind. I guess it looks like dead money, so that's probably why he's raised, but I just think that against such fishy looking players, you're not going to expect folds all that much, and sure enough these two players come along for the ride. I find that when kind of fishy players limp in late position and then the blinds get raised, that it kind of annoys them because you know, they limp and then it gets to the blinds and they kind of expect the blinds to just like fold or flat, and then when they raise it kind of just annoys them and they get stubborn and just call off, obviously, with their crappy hands. So with that in mind, I think that I would maybe just flat pre-flop here, or maybe even just like fold, just for the sake of avoiding a multi-way pot. But I think a flat's fine, and take a cheap flop and see how it comes. I mean, if you had flat in this hand, you could easily check fold such a crappy board, and you've only lost yourself 15 cents by doing that, as opposed to losing $1.15 when you miss with ace jack. Also, I mean, as you can see, this guy's got jack 6, and if you had have limped and a jack had come down, then you might get paid off by this guy. I would limp there with ace queen and sometimes ace king. And just take a cheap flop and see what happens, and it's easy to fold if you miss, and you know, you're in early position, so you can't really be c-betting a missed flop all that much. So I just think it's not the best place to raise ace jack there. So what's the next one? Let's see. Okay, next hand he's got 8s, so let's find those. I think it's this one. Okay, so he raises 85 cents, and firstly I don't like the 85 cent raise, and this hand kind of shows you why. This villain 3-bets to 205, which is a kind of small 3-bet really. I mean, it's not that much more than a min raise when you think about it. Folds round and Patrick folds. So firstly, I don't like the 85 cent open here, because every time you fold it's kind of costing you 10 cents. I mean, if you'd have raised to 75 cents or 3 times the big blind, you would have saved yourself 10 cents there when folding. But I actually don't think that you should fold here. He's got what, like 95 or so big blinds effective, so he's got enough money behind to warrant a set mine, especially when you only really have to call your raise again. Also, his 3-bet stat is ridiculously high. 14.8 is very high indeed. So there might even be argument for a 4-bet here, but I think I would probably just take a flop, and he's going to have air there a lot, so there's going to be a lot of flops that play off reasonably well for 8s. So like a 7 high flop or a 6 high flop would obviously play off really well, or a flop like Queen 6-3 or King 7-5, something where you've got like a second pair might be worth a check raise. And I think because he's going to wind up with a lot of junky hands there, 3-betting 14.8%, that you're going to force a lot of folds if you check raise kind of reasonably decent flops for your 8s. So there's that. Okay, so 8-8 of spades in the big blind. The player raises, opens from under the gun, and he's kind of active player. He is opening 22% of hands, which is a fair amount. I mean, it's 6-handed table, so it's kind of optimal really. But fishy player here flats, and so does this other fishy player. And Patrick actually folds his ace-8, and I think that this is one of those times when you can kind of loosen up your pre-flop calling range and just actually see a flop here with ace-8 suited. I mean, suited aces play really well in no limit, because obviously like the ultimate situation would be if this guy had like a King 10 of spades or a Queen 9 of spades, or basically just over flushing people can earn you a lot of money in no limit. If the flop rolled out like this, I mean, it's pretty much a check fold depending on stats of anyone betting. When it gets checked round, I mean, this guy could be just stabbing to take it down in position, but it's actually really passive. I mean, he's only played 28 hands, but 0.6 aggression is super passive, so I would guess he probably actually does have a jack there. So it would be an easy check fold with ace-8 on this board to this player betting, but if this player was more like this guy with a 7% aggression, that might even be worth a check raise with second pair there, and I think that would force a lot of folds. Okay, so there's an under the gun open. I mean, this guy is very aggressive. Pre-flop, I mean, he limps a lot of hands and is raising 28%. So he could have a lot of junky hands there. Fishy player calls, the other fishy player folds, and Patrick flats. And I didn't mention this in the forum thread I wrote about this hand history review, but I might even just fold there. I mean, I probably wouldn't because it's a six-handed table, but in a full ring game, if someone opens from under the gun, even if they are really kind of active in the game and quite aggressive pre-flop, then I might just fold my king jack even though it's suited, just to avoid getting dominated, really, I guess. But I mean, a flat here is fine with king jack. But this player 3-bets and Patrick folds. This isn't the hand I'm looking for. Okay, that was weird. So I found the hand I was actually looking for, where Patrick's got the king jack of clubs. So it gets folded to him. It's 5-handed. He 3x's from the cutoff, which is pretty standard. And he gets called by the big blind, and the flop rolls out ace-ace-4 with the nut flush draw, or the lock flush draw, should I say. And the big blind caller checks, and Patrick c-bets. Firstly, I would say that if you are going to c-bet here, that 120 is a little bit high. I think you could easily just bet $1 and save yourself 20 cents every time they call. But I actually don't think I would c-bet here, even though I've got the flush draw, because basically you want to punish people for slow playing their 3-of-a-kinds, and there's just every chance that you could get check raised when you c-bet a paired flop like this, especially when it's kind of like a card that a raiser or a pre-flop opener or pre-flop caller might have, like a ace king queen kind of paired board, aces queens kings paired board, sorry. People won't generally believe your c-bet is all that strong. They'll just think you're trying to stab at the pot and take it down, so a lot of people might raise there. Also, like I said, you want to kind of punish the people for slow playing their aces, so I think that it's best to just take a free card on the flop and see if you hit. And the guy calls, which isn't great. You pick up a gut shot on the turn, but I mean, it's pretty much a check fold now that he's check calls the flop, because I mean, there's every chance that you could have an ace, or maybe even pocket fours or ace 4, and you could be drawing dead, so there's no point in semi-bluffing it now, I don't think. He checks, and Patrick checks the turn, which is fine, and he blanks the river, and I believe it goes check check, and yeah, he takes it down with his 8. But I just don't don't think I would want to c-bet the flop there. I often don't c-bet flops where it comes down paired like this with aces, kings, queens, like jacks as well. Because people just don't give you credit for it. I mean, against some players that do c-bet those kind of flops, I will c-bet because they'll fold kind of often, which is fine. But I just think that I would want to take a free card here with the flush draw on this flop, just in case he's slow playing something big. Also, there's a hand that Patrick played that I want to just show, which is kind of similar. So Patrick's the one with the eights this time. Razor from mid position, or sorry, the cutoff. He flats from the big blind with eights, and the flop rolls off with a flush draw, and it's paired. So Patrick checks, and Villain c-bets 125. So it's basically the same situation, but Patrick actually check raises. Imagine if this is Patrick with his king jack and he's been check raised there. I mean, it's not the best situation. I mean, you end up kind of feeling like you should call and try and hit your flush with the kind of added implied odds of the fact that he could have trips here. So I think that just taking a free card in the other king jack hand is the best option there. Okay, so he's got pocket eights in the big blind. Gets folded around to the button, who opens for 85. And I mean, they're raising 16% of hands pre-flop, which, I mean, it's not low, but it's not high either. It's a little bit lower than optimal for 6-handed tables or 6-max games. So, I mean, I would give it more credit than I might against this guy. This guy who's betting 22%. But basically, I think that with small and mid-pocket pairs, you just want to see a flop for as cheap as possible. However, Patrick makes quite a strong 3-bet, which I don't think is the best play in this situation. Villain's actually folding 0% of 3-bets, so you're going to kind of expect to get called here. I mean, he's only 74 hands is the sample, but I would just definitely flat and take a flop on the cheap here with my eights. Obviously, because he's got 0% fold to 3-bet, he's going to be calling there. So he does, and the flop rolls out 10 high. And when you 3-bet pre-flop, I mean, you're going to have to c-bet this flop, which he does, but I think that $2.70 is a little bit light. I would have liked to make really a strong c-bet to kind of just rep aces or kings there, kind of maybe $4, which I think will force a lot of folds, unless he's got like a strong flush draw or a hand like a set or something. So $2.70, and he calls. Now who knows if he's calling because he thinks it's a weak looking bet, or if he's got like a set of 3s or 5s or something like that, or a ace-4 flush draw. I mean, who knows what he really has, but I just think I would have liked to have seen a stronger c-bet there out of position, especially when you 3-bet so strong. I think that it almost would smell like an ace-king or an ace-queen, this kind of bet size, so I can see why he might float there. And sure enough, turn comes down to 9. Patrick basically gives up, and this player just throws in like a really big bet, which could be for value or it could be a steal, but I mean, we'll never know. I think it would have just been better to take a cheap flop, and then you can you could have, like, I guess, check raised this flop with 8s if this guy c-bets, and his c-betting 100% of single raise pots, so I mean, he's gonna c-bet if you check, but like I said, I think a check raise might play off quite well on that flop. I thought Patrick's C bets were a little bit on the large side, sorry. He has ace queen off in one hand in position, and the flop comes down king jack 6, so he's got a gut shot in position. It gets checked to him and he bets 120 into 180, and I just think he could easily get away with betting $1 instead of 120 and just save himself a few kind of cents every time the hand goes bad. There's another time where he bets 120 into a pot of 160 with a missed hand. I think you could easily make that 90 cents or just $1 just to make it easier. Then there's another hand where he 3-bets a player kind of in a similar situation to this, where firstly he 3-bets a player that doesn't fold to 3-bets all that much, but he does it with queen 10 off from the small blind, and he 3-bets to 250, and the original raiser only raises 3x, so I think a standard 3-bet would be 225 there. And in the hand in question with the queen 10 off, he gets 4-bet and is forced to fold, so he kind of cost himself 25 cents in that hand just by kind of over 3-betting a bit. So yeah, that's it really. I mean, he's a pretty solid player by the looks of things. I've played with him for quite a lot of hands on PokerStars actually a year or so ago. But yeah, I hope that you can take something from this, or anyone else watching this can kind of get a few handy tips to use in your cash games. And if anyone's got any questions, then just chuck them over to me on the forum or send me a PM or something. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video.